When dragons carry what should never exist, the world trembles as their unborn spawn grow stronger than even fire and scale. The skies of the mountain range were alive with crimson firelight as two dragons circled above the clouds. Their wings stretched wide, shimmering with scales that reflected the dying sun. These were not mere beasts of legend, but the last of their kind. A mated pair who had survived centuries of war, famine, and mankind's relentless pursuit of their extinction. Their names, in the deep rumble of the draconic tongue, were Valethar and Silith. Together they ruled the Crimson Peaks, their bond forged not just in blood and flame, but in the promise of a future. For the first time in countless years, hope had stirred within them. Silith carried their brood. Her belly had grown heavy, and though her kind often swelled with heat and fire when bearing eggs, this was different. She felt life moving within her, but not the small, delicate shifting of dragon embryos waiting to harden their shells. These movements were violent, jerking, sharp, as though knives pressed from inside. Valethar noticed the change too. He had lain with Silith enough seasons to know the rhythm of dragon reproduction. Eggs should have formed, heavy as stone, ready to be laid in the volcanic nests. But Silith's belly did not harden with shells, it quivered. It bulged. Sometimes, beneath the thin membrane of scale at her abdomen. He swore he could see something pressing outward like a claw. At first, they dismissed it as an unusual gestation. After all, they were the last dragons. Perhaps nature itself had altered them. But as weeks passed, Silith's pain grew unbearable. She no longer roared in triumph when they flew together. Her breaths became labored, and her eyes, once gleaming gold, darkened with exhaustion. One night, as the storm raged across the mountain cliffs, Silith collapsed in their lair. Her body convulsed, wings twitching against the stone floor. Valethar pressed close, curling his massive body around hers. He whispered guttural reassurances, promising that she was strong, that their children would live. But then he felt it. A violent thud against her belly, so forceful it made her whole frame jolt. And then another, like fists pounding from within. Silith hissed, her jaws clenching. "It is wrong, Valethar. Our brood. It is not ours." He froze. "What do you mean?" "They move not as dragons. They hunger inside me. They scrape and tear. I dream of teeth of acid dripping in the dark. They want to break me." Her voice, usually thunderous, trembled like a dying flame. Valethar's mind reeled. He had heard stories, whispers among the old dragons of parasites that rode falling stars, creatures that planted their seed in hosts of any kind. No one had ever proven such tales true. But now, seeing Silith's trembling belly, he knew the myths had teeth. Something had invaded her womb. Something growing, waiting, feeding. Days turned to nights, and Silith's belly swelled grotesquely. What once might have carried 3 or 4 dragon eggs now bulged like a great swollen blister, the movements inside undeniable. Her scales cracked from the pressure. Sometimes, in the moonlight, translucent outlines appeared beneath her skin. Elongated skulls with ridged crowns, jaws that opened and snapped in silence. Valethar watched in helpless horror as the forms inside grew stronger. And then it happened to him. Valethar had thought himself safe, the protector, the mate. But one evening, he too felt a strange ache in his belly. He dismissed it at first, attributing it to stress, to the overconsumption of prey. But the ache worsened. Within nights, he too felt the writhing movements. The invasion had spread to him. The realization hit like cold steel. When they had lain together, Silith already carried the parasite. Through her fire, her blood, her intimacy, it had transferred to him. They were both hosts now, both carrying the same terrible future. Together, they lay in their cavern, their bodies trembling with the burden of carrying life that was not theirs. They spoke less with words and more with weary glances, knowing that soon the creatures inside would grow too strong to be contained. "I feel them clawing," Silith rasped one night. Her belly shifted grotesquely, the sharp ridge of a jaw pressing against her scales before retreating. "They are not weak like dragonlings. They want to tear free." Veilthar's chest burned with fury, but also dread. His belly too was alive, pulsing with movements that did not belong. He could feel the alien hunger of what was growing inside him, their silent demand to be born. Yet still he loved her. In the midst of their torment, he draped his wings over her, sharing what warmth he could. "We will endure, Silith. We are dragons. Nothing bursts from us without our will." But his words rang hollow. The days stretched into agony. The xenomorphs inside them grew stronger. Their claws pressed outward, tearing muscle. Acid dripped inside their bodies, burning them from within. At times Silith screamed so loudly the mountains shook, her roars echoing across the valleys. Villages far below huddled in fear, thinking the dragons had turned mad with rage. But it was not madness, it was pain. Then came the night the mountains bled. A blood moon rose, casting its crimson glow over the peaks. Veilthar stirred, his body convulsing. His belly churned violently, the movements within frantic, as though the creatures sensed the time was near. Silith lay beside him, her abdomen stretching outward as something inside slammed against her flesh. "They are coming," she gasped, her voice cracked with despair. Veilthar roared, slamming his tail against the stone. His body heaved as his belly bulged grotesquely. He felt the bones within him cracking, the muscles tearing as the bursters grew too large to remain confined. Silith screamed, a long guttural cry that shook the lair. Her stomach split with a sickening tear, blood pouring over the stone floor. For a moment, it seemed as if fire might erupt, but instead, black shapes pushed outward. A massive, ridged skull burst through, its jaws snapping, drenched in her blood. Not the small chest-bursters of rumor, but giant, dragon-sized horrors that had been nourished by her immense body. Veilthar howled in grief as Silith's life drained away. He lunged to her side, but his own belly betrayed him. With a tearing sound, his abdomen split open, his insides ripped apart as monstrous bursters clawed their way free. Their tails lashed, their bodies steaming with acid and blood. The lair became a slaughterhouse. The dragon couple's roars turned into dying cries, drowned beneath the screeches of their alien spawn. The creatures writhed across the cavern floor, long and slick, their bodies already growing larger than any xenomorph birthed before. They had been born from dragons, creatures of fire and might, and their strength reflected that. Veilthar's vision dimmed as his lifeblood poured onto the stone. He turned his fading gaze toward Silith. Her eyes, clouded with pain, found his. For a heartbeat, they shared one final moment of love, the bond of mates who had fought for centuries. And then, together, they fell silent. The dragon couple was no more, but their legacy remained. The bursters grew swiftly, feeding on the carcasses of their massive hosts. Their ridged skulls glistened in the moonlight, and their bodies stretched longer with every passing hour. Within days, they were as large as young dragons. Their wings tore free from their backs, not leathery like their parents, but slick and black, like living shadows. They climbed the mountains, their screeches echoing in the night, heralding a new terror. From the blood of dragons, a new breed had been born. Xenomorphs with the strength of fire and the wings of giants. The world below would never be the same.